Would you like to paint this cute little snowman? Hi, this is Stevie. I had a vase that I bought last year with some Christmas greenery in it, and at the same time I had bought that little snowman, and I just decided to set him up against the vase, and I thought this would make a really cute sketch. So I did my line work with my Micron 05 pen, and I'm going to do the greenery I did indicate with some lines where it's going to go, but I didn't draw all of that, all of those little pine needles. I'm just going to do that with my brush. So I'm going to get started and just throw a little water on the paper like I usually do in the area of the greenery. And that's to make some of it look a little looser. I don't know if I'll be that successful on this small piece of paper, but I'll give it a try. And I like to start my greenery with a light yellowish green color, or you can even use yellow, like a lemon yellow, just to give some life to the greenery. And once I get the darker color on, you'll see how the lighter color peeks through, and it looks really nice, kind of like it's glowing. So right now I'm just getting that lighter color on where I'm going to have the greenery. You can see that I'm quickly painting some pine needles there. And I only used two brushes for this painting. They're both Princeton brushes, Princeton Velvet Touch. One is a number 2, the smaller brush, and then a number 4, and that was it. So I used my number 2 for all of the greenery so far. Now I switched over to my number 4 to get some of those holly leaves painted in. And I have a lot of green together in this painting, so I tried to vary the colors a little bit by mixing in different colors. So here I took some sap. No, that's not sap. That is, it's a Daniel Smith color called Cascade Green, and it's a cool green. It's got a lot of blue in it, which I really like, especially when it's more in the background. It tends to push the object back in the painting. So that's a mix of that yellow with some Cascade Green. And now I added a little bit of French ultramarine to it to darken it a little bit. I didn't want the leaves to be too light, although I think later on I went a little bit too dark. But anyway, you can play around with that to your liking. So got the holly leaves done, and then I'm going to move on to the pine branches, the pine needles, and just getting some dark color in there. Then I'll have to switch back to my smaller brush to do those pine needles. But I mixed up a different kind of green. Oh, I have a leaf there in the front, and that was sap green mixed with a little bit of French ultramarine blue, just so that it looks a little different from the other leaves next to it, those holly leaves. So now back to my number 2 brush, and I picked up a little bit of my quinacridone burnt orange, and you could use burnt sienna, very similar, and just a touch of French ultramarine to darken it a bit. And I'm just indicating some lines for the branches, the pine branches. And then I actually used some of that quin burnt orange and mixed it into my green color that I already had there. And again, that makes a different color of green. And see the quick strokes that I'm making for those pine branches? And I'm holding the brush very loosely, standing it straight up, but holding it loosely against the paper and working very quickly. And notice how I make those strokes in all different directions. Kind of messy looking strokes, but that's what makes those pine needles look more natural than just little soldiers all lined up in a row. And then there's some other greenery in the photo that's just little things sticking out, some kind of pine, I guess. And I indicated some of that, just kind of filling in the areas where I think it needs something. And you notice that I'm making that one pine needle at the top, look like it's behind the holly leaf, just to give some variation. And here you can see how fast I work. Well, this is speeded up 2 times, but I still work pretty quickly to get those pine needles in there. And look how loose it is. And it's good to work fast if you want a loose look. So now I'm just kind of going around, darkening areas that I think need darkening at the base of that leaf. I'll probably do a little more on the holly leaves too to darken them at the base. I don't want to have the same value all the way across each leaf, so I like to vary that a little bit. Darker toward the bottom, going lighter toward the top. But here I think I got carried away, and I wish I had left that a little bit lighter. Just some dark toward the bottom and leave it lighter at the top. But, you know, it's there now, so I have to live with it. Live and learn. I just want the variation in color. That's why I said that I think I got too much dark. But I guess that's okay. So now when you look at those leaves, you can see different kinds of greens, which is what I wanted. So then I can move on to my little vase, and the top of it, the rim looked like a candy cane stripe. So I took my cad red light, and I'm just quickly painting that in. I'm leaving some white spaces there, white marks on the rim to indicate the highlights that I saw in the photo. And just going around doing some on the other side as well, behind his hat. And you may have to let some of these things dry in between so you don't mix your colors up. For example, when you start his hat, make sure that the greenery and the red is dry behind it, or you'll get colors running into each other. So now I'm taking my French ultramarine. I don't have black on my palette. I like to mix my black with French ultramarine and quinacridone burnt orange. So now I'm going to use that mix to paint his hat. And he's got that little red brim around it, and it looks kind of fuzzy to me, almost like fluffy, like fur or something. So I tried to make it, when I drew it, I tried to make it look fluffy that way, and then I painted it the same way. And you can see how that brim of his hat is floppy, and you can see some of the inside of that brim around the edges of his head. And I'll try to separate that with more dark value after the first layer dries. So that's the first layer. I'll get back to the hat later after it dries. So now just moving on, working on his scarf, which is just a solid red. Just again, using the cad red light to do that. This makes it pretty easy when you have a large area like that that's just a solid color. And I had drawn the fringe on his little scarf just with my pen, with my ink, and it's white in the photo, so I'm just going to leave that fringe the way it is. I guess you could do little red lines if you wanted. I just left it. And getting in the back part of that scarf, and I will want to get some shadow in there. And I already did there. I added some, I don't know why I did this, I added some cobalt blue violet to make a shadow at the bottom of the front of his scarf there. And I don't think my paint was dry when I did it, and I don't like how that looks. I'm going to go back and fix that later. But now I mixed up a shadow color to work on the vase, just to get some shadows on that vase since it's white, just to give it some shape. And what I did was I took a little bit of that black mix with more water, making it gray. Then I added to that a little bit of my cobalt blue and cobalt blue violet. I didn't want it to really look gray. I wanted it more of a bluish violet color. So anything like that would work, but the gray to me looks just so dead. I didn't want it solid gray. Now going on with his, you could use any orange. I have my transparent orange for his carrot nose. His eyes I had already done with ink, with my micron pen, so I just left those alone. And then I used a little bit of quinacridone gold for his buttons. You could also use yellow ochre or raw sienna for that, or gold paint if you have that. And then on his little legs, which are really just some jute, kind of like string, I just used a little bit. I wet the legs first and then used a bit of my Quinburn orange to paint that. Just a quick little job. And now I'm trying to get some shadow in on his scarf because I had to let the scarf dry. And I went back with more violet, I think with violet. Not a great idea. And I'll fix that again later on. I'm adding more red color there just to help try and fix that. But I had better success later on when I used a different color. I'll move on for now. So now onto his little coat or sweater. And I'm not going to duplicate it exactly the way it looks in the photo, but just give the idea of that plaid. Because it's pretty tiny in the photo and I don't want to put that many lines in it. So I'm just giving the idea of a plaid pattern, starting out with the red. And make sure, when you do this, make sure that your red paint is dry before you go back and apply your green color. Otherwise, you could have a disaster. And what I used for that green is the Cascade green, which is that nice cool green. I think that looks really nice with the red. That's very much like Viridian. If you don't have Cascade green, you could use Viridian. That's also a really nice color, nice cool color. So onto the little, his feet, the little boots that he has on. And I used my black mix for that. And I had a bit of a disaster on one of those boots that you'll see. I dropped some water on one of them, on the one on the right. And I didn't notice it. I didn't pick it up right away. And it made it look like he had a hole in his boot. So I had to go back and fix that later. But you have to let it dry first before you can go back and fix it. And here I'm mixing up another shadow color, the one I told you about before. And what I'm doing, that little area of white fur, it looks like white fur at the bottom of his sweater, I wet that area first, and then I just went around it with that light shadow color to give some form to it, and the same with his little snowman hand. I wet it and then went around the edges with that shadow color. And I went back on the fur around his tummy because I didn't like the shadow so much on the top of that, just at the bottom of that fur. So I took some of that off. And then I need to go around his face and do the same thing. And this is just to give form to it, to make it look like it's round. So wet it first, which makes it easier for the color to spread, and then just get a little bit of shadow on it. Now back to that, back to the shoe. Oh boy, that was a challenge. I think I had to work on it 3 times to fix it. Now, I don't know why I didn't do this before, but I have a color on my palette called Carmine. It's a deep red. And I went back to fix the shadow on his scarf with that, and that worked really well to cover up what I had before that I didn't like. So that's very much like alizarin. I don't have alizarin crimson on my palette. I use the Carmine instead, but that worked really well. Now just getting some light shadow color in. I wanted him to be looking like he's sitting down rather than just floating in space. So I got that. I just kind of made up the shadow, but you can see I have the shadow going off to the right because the left side of the vase is highlighted. So the shadow would be on the other side, on the right side, and I just wanted to make that consistent with the vase. So his shadow goes off to the right. He's still got the hole in his boot. I still have to work on that. It looks like a hole in the bottom of his boot. But now he looks better with the shadow. Now back up to the hat. I wanted to darken it a little bit. And I'm getting some more dark color, the black that I mixed, in where you see the floppy areas of his hat, where it turns. I got some more dark area in there to make it look more like it's turning rather than just flat color. And then I used Cad Red to do the little brim on his hat. And I think that turned out pretty cute. So I think it looks pretty good now, except that I have that hole in the boot to fix. And I'm just making some touch-ups there, adding a little more. I don't think I had enough of the shadow color around his face, so I added a little bit more as it dried. He's looking pretty good now. I got a little bit of a shadow in there under the vase, between his arm and the vase. Now back in with some of the black color to try and fix that boot that looks like it had the hole. I just had to make sure that the paper was really dry before I did that, or I'd just keep digging into the paper. So I wanted to add a little red color up to the greenery at the top. And I thought, there are berries in the photo, so I thought, oh, I'll add some berries. And what I used for that was a Posca pen rather than watercolor, because I thought the watercolor would look too dull on top of the green. And Posca pens, that's P-O-S-C-A, Posca pens are great to have. It's acrylic paint, so it's opaque, and it will sit right on top of the watercolor. And that looked much more vibrant than a watercolor red would. Then I decided it needed something else, so I pulled out my gold Starry Night colors. I think they're called Starry or Starry Night. I know the craft stores sell them now. I got these online. And I just spattered some of the gold. I got it really wet with a lot of water, and then spattered some on to the greenery, and then a little bit on his buttons. And I liked how it made the buttons stand out too. So that was a nice touch. Then after all that dried, I decided that the red berries needed to be bumped up a little bit more. And I had this product sitting around. I've never used it before. It's made, it's the Michaels. I got it at Michaels. It's their brand. It's called Recollections. And it's called Glitter Glue. Glitter Glue. And I had 3 of them. And this one was the color closest to red. So I just dabbed some of that on, and look how sparkly and nice it made that. And I put some on the brim of his hat too. So there in the light you can really see how it sparkles. Then at the very end, I thought, he only has one arm. And I just didn't notice the little bit of his arm showing on the right side when I drew it. But I didn't want him to have just one arm. So I went back and drew a little bit of his arm that shows there, and put in some plaid for his arm, fix that. I was just drying my painting there so I could get the green color in on the plaid as well. And I feel better now that I added his arm to the right. But he turned out pretty cute. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing. And thanks so much for watching.